Hi guys! I've had a couple of people ask me how I do my eyes, so I thought it would be nice if I make a quick tutorial on how I draw my eyes. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about the different kinds of eyes you can draw because there are so many different types, and in the end that's just a matter of preference. So for that reason, this tutorial will instead explain how I color my eyes in my art. Of course, this is how I do it, and I by no means believe this is the right way to do so. If you choose to adhere to my example, so that's awesome. But in the long run, just as I have done for my own technique, I hope you'll take the knowledge that you learned from this video and make it your own. So that is, if you put your own twist on it somehow and you add to it, and so it becomes your own proper style when you draw. Okay, so let's get started. So as you can see, I already have a sketch drawn out for the eyes. I always start with the line art, and I always start with a sketch just because I'm really slow. So I'm just going to go ahead and zip through the line art here. Great, and once my line art is in place, I can start. So we're just going to set a background just so it's easier to color in the whites of the eyes, and we're going to get started on those whites. So I guess there's not really one specific way to do this. You just kind of try and stay in the area and try to make it even. I'm really bad at that, so I guess you kind of just eye it. And so I'll just continue doing this. Great. So once the whites of the eyes are done, you're going to want to do the irises themselves. So you just kind of take whatever color you want. This color can be changed later through the hue and saturation tool. And so that's in Paint Tool style, you can find that under the filter option up in the menu. Okay, so you want to make sure the whites of your eyes, there's no pixels seeing through. So I kind of noticed that I didn't get all the area. So for what I do when I paint is I click the Preserve Opacity above the Layers menu. And so that allows me to paint on that layer without going outside the lines, if you will. And so that's what I do when I do the shadows of the eyes. And you want to add shadows to the eyes because eyes aren't typically just white, so it adds it adds more depth in generally. So then once you add the shadows in the eyes, you just take the blur tool and you're going to blend it, and you're going to take out those hard lines. To add more depth, what we're going to do afterwards is we're going to add another darker shadow at the top of what we already have, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and blend that. And once you're done blending the shadows, we're going to move on to the iris. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to select the layer of the iris, so the base color. We're going to create a new layer and then select Clip and Group, which will allow us to work on a different layer. So if you make any mistakes, you can just alter that layer. And again, it won't go over the lines of the layer that's on the bottom of the clipping group. So to start off, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create the two orbs in the center of the iris. So these are gonna be the pupils. I also like to create outlines around the edges of my eyes. And then once we're done with that, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take the airbrush tool, and we're going to add some blending, if you will, on the top of the eye. I guess technically what you could also do is you could use a tool that creates a hard line, like the pencil, and you could create just a hard line over the top and then blend it with the blur tool. but I like to keep a hard line around the edges and also in the pupil, so I like to use the airbrush tools personally. So then after we do that layer, what we're going to do is we're going to create another layer to do the next shade, and for that we're going to do the lines around the pupil to kind of give it definition, and we're going to do that for each eye. And then afterwards I like to add more shadow on top of the eye. So we're going to do the same thing that we did before, where we take the airbrush tool and we add some shadow on top of the eye. You can add as much shadow as you like. It's a matter of preference. You kind of figure out what you like and how much you like in terms of shadow to the rest of it. So you kind of just have to play around and see what you're comfortable with. So once you add more shadow, then I like to add more. I'll go a darker shade, and then I kind of do a gradual into black because I just like the effect it gives. But again, this is a matter of personal preference. If you don't like that and you like brighter eyes, you might opt out of that. I kind of like how it connects into the eyelashes, so that's how I do it. Once the shadow has been added, what I like to do is then move on to the lights. So then I'll take the airbrush tool, I'll choose a really bright color, and I'll just go over in the bottom. And then what I'll do is I'll take the erase tool and I'll create like a small, I'll erase a small circle of it so that it creates kind of like an arch or like a rainbow, if you will. And it doesn't matter if you go outside the eye, because then you can just use a clip and group again and it won't surpass the bottom layer. And then once you remove the bottom, I'll take the blur tool and then I'll blend it just a smidge. Okay, and I'll fix the top as well so it's not as blended and it's got a little bit of a harder line. Once that's done, then you can mess around with the layer mode a bit. I tend to set this to luminosity, and then what we'll do is we'll play around with the opacity of the layer and get it to what you like, because the luminosity at 100% is really bright and kind of intense. It's a lot more than what you actually need. But I'm not going to say there's one specific value that you should set it to. Again, this is preference, and you're going to set it to what looks best. Okay, so next we're going to do the rest of the highlights in the eye. So using the same color that we used to make that shine on the bottom, we're going to do 4 dots. So north, south, east, west on each eye. And then we're going to do smaller dots in between each of those. And at the half point between each of those dots, we're going to do little flecks. So that's going to add a lot more shine around the pupil. And then in the center of the eye, we can just kind of do little flecks again to add more shine to the eye. And then if you want, you can change color to give a little contrast, if you will. And then again, like the shine in the bottom of the eye, we're going to set this layer to luminosity and adjust the opacity of the layer. Sometimes I like to add a bit more shine to the eye, so what I'll do is I'll add in a brighter color a little flick of color, if you will, across the top of the arch that we created earlier. Depending on how bright the color is, you can set it to normal or luminosity, depending on how you see fit and depending on how it looks. So once we're done with that, we're pretty much all done with the colors of the eye. So then you can go ahead and change the color if you will. You can, under the folder set, play with the hue. So that's what I did here, is I went into the folder set and played with all the colors at once, and I changed it to this blue, which I thought was brighter and more vibrant than the little turquoise that we had earlier. And then seeing as you played with the color of the iris, next we're going to have to change the color of the shadow in the eye so that it matches. So here I played a bit with the hue, and then I brought down the saturation of it so it's a little bit grayer and less vibrant, because you don't want it to be too bright. And now we're on the final part of designing the eye. We're going to add the final highlights to make it even more shiny and sparkly, if you will. So that's the white of the eyes. So what I do is I do horizontal lines that come at the midway of the pupil, and they go through the white of the eyes and into the iris. So I get to do that on both sides, and then I do them at the corners as well. So again, the highlights in the eyes is a matter of preference. You can have more sparkles, you can have less. So in the end, it kind of just really depends on what kind of effect you want in your eyes. The more sparkles they are, the brighter they are typically. So then once the sparkles are done in the eyes, you're pretty much done. So that's it for this video. If you liked what you learned, go ahead and like that video, and if you want to see more art from me, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to check me out on DeviantArt, Twitter, or on Facebook, all of those links will be down in the description bar, so you can go ahead and take a look at that. Otherwise, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you around.